Hi, and welcome to this Dharamshala International Film Festival 2020 Q&A session with Maddie Doe on her most recent film, the sci-fi horror mystery drama, The Long Walk. It's not only one of the most unique films I've seen, but also one of the most unique depictions of loss and grief. So I'm really excited to talk to you, Maddie, and to get into what this film is all about. It's really great to have you here today, and welcome and hello.
Sabaidi, everyone at Dharamshala. I'm so happy to meet you guys. I mean, virtually.
Yeah. So, okay, let's start with a sort of basic question. I was reading that the inception of the film began with this vague idea you had about an elderly man walking up and down a long dirt road with a ghostly companion from the past. I wanted to ask you what inspired that image and ultimately the story as a whole.
um, that was actually like the second inspiration to the
Okay.
film because we have a lot of beautiful roads here, and you've seen them. They're like still untouched, still like very ardent and naturistic, right? We have beautiful landscapes, as I'm sure you do as well,
Hmm.
in your area. But the old man walking down the dirt road, being long suffering and being surrounded by mysticism and supernatural elements, is really a big stereotype that people have of us Asians. You know, when you think of Asia, be it South Asia or Southeast Asia or even like Japan or something, there's this idea that we're like mystical, supernatural, like Orientals, right? And
Hmm.
in our region, I think similarly to South Asia as well, there are a lot of Occidentals that only see poverty and they think that this is our reality constantly. Our daily lives are just basically, it's what they want to see is poverty porn. And it's something that used to really frustrate me because if anyone's seen my last film before this, Nong Hak, Dear Sister, it depicted a lot of class structures, kind of almost like caste systems, hierarchy amongst society in our capital, in Vientiane, where I live. And there were white people who were pissed about it. They were white people that were like, why wouldn't you make a more authentic film, a film about poor Lao villagers in, rural areas? And I was just like, excuse me,
Hmm.
like, what is this authentic concept you have that you think I'm living in a hut house? And the reality is there are poor people here, and there are people who live in, what we call bansonabot, or hut houses. And when I was filming Dear Sister, the opening started in one of these houses. And it was really it was a strange feeling to have, Abhinav, to like be in 2014 or 2015 standing in this hut house in the capital, well, not in the capital, in the province that barely had any working electricity or running water. And I thought, this is 2015. What's it going to be like in 50 years? And then I
Hmm.
got that kind of stereotyping and I got that kind of judgment. And so I thought, fine, I will give you the movie you're looking for. I will give you the Southeast Asia that you want, with dirt roads, hut houses, villages, market ladies, nature, poverty, and science fiction ghosts. Like,
Right.
have fun with
Right.
that. Because I mean, no one can tell us the stories that we should make about our own people and our own
Yeah.
countries and cultures, you know?
Right. Right. So, I was also reading that you have talked a lot about this idea of the authentic Lao film and telling an authentic Lao story. What do
Mm.
you, and you've already commented on this a little bit, but if there's anything else you want to elaborate on that, what do you think makes an authentic Lao story?
I mean, I think that this whole festival, Dharamshala, is definitely looking for what is culturally unique but daring. Still, I saw the selection. There's a lot of films that you could say are very authentic, but yet they're edgy and they're willing to do something no one else has done before. And for me, what is authentic is just not copying what people think other people want to see. We have this problem in Lao in that we don't really have a strong cinema culture yet, because
Hmm.
post revolution there were no films. The revolution happened around, ended around 75, and then we had no cinemas. Like literally we didn't have any cinemas, and then we had no new films. And the first film post-revolution was a romantic comedy called Sabay Di Long Pabang, which my producers made. And then it was kind of a rom-com in the way that Indian and Thai rom-coms are, you know. It was really only missing a song. It could have been an Indian, could have been an Indian rom-com. But after that, the movies that came out were very much imitating the other Asian predecessors, like Thailand, like India, like Japan. And it was just, you know, almost like this is the expectation of what a film should be. But it didn't feel to me like anyone was trying to seize Lao in the moment, or trying to even show their bias or their perspective of Lao in any way, except I should make this kind of film because those are the kinds of films that other Asians are making. And this is kind of what we're used to, you know? And so for myself, I don't think that authentic Lao film means you have to have any certain element, but I do think that there should be an effort to tell the story from your perspective and your reality of Lao.
Right, right. Okay. And getting a little bit into the themes of The Long Walk, I was thinking that subjects of loss and grief have been tackled in a number of ways when we look at the history of film. So I was curious, what was it about the horror and science fiction genres that drew you to tell this particular story?
I'm a horror or genre filmmaker first.
Okay.
All my films have been genre actually, and they may not necessarily feel like it because I don't come from a cinema background. I come from a dance background. As a ballet dancer, almost all of our ballets are also genre. You know, we have the girl that turns into a swan by moonlight like a fucking werewolf. And we have Giselle who rises from the dead and is a ghost. I simply love genre stories. And I think that could be cultural as well, because Lao people are still very tied with the supernatural. I think a lot of Asians are actually, like, there's a lot of things that happen and we still believe that there's like supernatural interference or supernatural occurrences. And it's quite a natural part of the fabric of our daily lives. It's not like, Western ghosts are like, they only appear in the dark and they're like, jump scare out of your closet or under your bed.
Yeah.
But for Asians, I could literally say, oh, there's a spirit sitting next to me right now. Maybe you don't see it, but I see it. And everyone would be like, oh yeah, okay. Like there's some credibility to that, you know? And I wanted to portray, like you said, the authentic perspective of how close the supernatural is to us as Lao people. And it is a very entering to genre, which I prefer to watch genre films. And I think making genre film is really fun, Navinit. You know, you don't have to take yourself so damn seriously when you're making a genre film.
Right.
Even though this movie is really, really serious.
No, I think you found a really beautiful balance of talking about some really serious things and examining grief in a really serious way, but also integrating the thrills of the genres in there. So it was a really, really wonderful blend. And I'm curious then, you said you started from a dance background. So what inspired you to make that shift to film?
It was kind of accidental, actually. I was never really interested in film before, I have to admit, which kind of like, sometimes it feels so wrong for me to say that, because there are people who, spend a lot of money and time trying to shift into film. And I really stumbled into it by accident. My husband and I moved to Laos because my mother had passed away, and I was running a ballet school in America. And we had had a lot of stress from the ballet school. And so I needed to shift into something different. And so we decided to go visit my dad, who we thought was kind of going nuts here in Asia. And he was fine, he was okay. But while we were here for a few months, we decided like to look into the film scene, because my husband is a screenwriter. In fact, he's the screenwriter of this film.
Right.
And there was like nothing. I mean, it was like a dearth of films. We'd heard about that one I told you, Sabay Di Long Pabang. And there was like hardly anything else. There was like one other guy making a film at the moment. And so we ended up drunk at a party with the people who made Sabay Di Long Pabang, and found out that they just felt like they didn't know how to continue because they were already older and they wanted to shift into a more administrative position and not direct anymore. And they're like, we don't have content. And my husband was just like, I have content. I'm a screenwriter. And they're like, great, you can do it. You can direct. And he's like, no. I'm the screenwriter that you lock in a dark room and never let see the light of day. I don't interact with people.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, that sucks. And he's like, and I don't speak Lao. And then they all kind of like turned to me and he's like, she speaks Lao. She could do it. She has like all kinds of performing arts experience. And I was like, yeah, like I teach 7-year-olds how to plie and they don't even know left and right yet. So I'm not sure how successful I am at that even, And so they decided that I should try my hand at making a film. And I had $5,000 that a beer company threw at me and I made my first film. And now I'm a filmmaker.
Right. And do you feel hopeful then about the future of cinema in Laos?
I feel hopeful about the future of cinema everywhere, I think.
Okay.
In Laos, I think we have issues. I don't want to say that money is our only issue because there are different levels of film, like we can't all be making films like India with multi-million-dollar budgets.
Yeah.
But we can make micro-budget films, or we can make other independent films or experimental films. I think one of the main issues we have in Laos is just understanding story better and understanding how to tell the story. I think this is part of our young cinema culture, or because we haven't seen a lot of cinema before this. Like I said, there's a lot of imitation of melodramas and soap operas and TV type movies, which is changing now. And so in that case, I feel very hopeful because I'm starting to see now that we have 3.5 cinemas in the country, people are getting exposed to different stories and different methods of storytelling. And I see it happening, but it might be happening slowly,
Okay.
I mean, even my films are hard for Lao people to watch because my narrative is not so linear.
Sure.
And I
not at all.
explain a lot. No, it's not.
Yeah.
And I don't explain a lot either because I don't like hand holding in film. Know when you watch films where they explain everything to you?
Yeah.
I dislike that a lot.
Yeah. No, and you're totally right because I found myself engaged throughout the entire film actively instead of being sort of a passive viewer. You're sort of piecing together this puzzle that's going on. And it was really engaging in that sense.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah. And
I watch it twice because the second time you watch it, you're still discovering new things. And it's really interesting to watch it knowing what's happening, actually.
Yeah. So, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the subject of grief in the film. To me, at least as I was watching it, I felt like so much of the old man character's story and his younger self is about how difficult it is for us to let go and move on from our tragedies. So, the young boy is unable to move on from his mother's death. We kind of see that in that really wonderfully macabre shot that you gave us of her rotting corpse, which
he hasn't moved it. Yeah,
exactly. And he hasn't moved it. And you see it in the old man who's still unable to let go of his mother's death. And he's literally going back in time to try to change that.
I mean, the first thing he does after he euthanizes her is he runs back and calls for her because he's assuming that in that parallel timeline that little boy is currently dealing with the shit he bestowed himself, that the mom is probably in that burial ground where he collects his old lady spirits,
Exactly.
And he makes a beeline for it. First he goes to her vegetable stand and then he goes to the cemetery and calls for her. It's like, it's highly disturbing.
Yeah. And so it got me thinking, what do you feel is sort of, or do you think there's a line between a healthy and unhealthy connection with the tragedies of our past? And if so, what do you think that line is?
I do think there's a line, and I don't think that anyone can define that for you because the reality is we all deal with things very differently. There's a lot of loss and death and grief associated with this film. And in fact, I lost my mother and my dog, and this film is about the loss of my mother and my dog. And when I was very young, I wondered if I could have done something different. And, there were many years that I would just think back all of the time, like, well, what if I had noticed before that she was having trouble eating? Or what if we had gone to the doctor earlier before, before it had progressed to a stage that we couldn't save her? Could she still be alive now? But that's definitely not a healthy mindset, because how could we have known that? How could we have suspected any of that? And who's to say that anything could have changed or would have changed? And on the other side, I had to euthanize my dog before we started production of this film. And a dog they can't tell you when it's time for them to go.
Right.
And you have to make the choice for them. And there's a part of you that feels so selfish. You're questioning yourself, like, am I doing the right thing? Right, is this what the dog wants? And it can't tell you that it's suffering. And so making this film was, for both my husband and I, really almost a way of dealing with our grief, and was an homage to them.
Right.
And shortly after the film finished, a stray dog drifted into our yard that was blind and deaf and decrepit. And we just kept it until it died. And we really, in the Asian in me was like, it brought luck to me because I took care of it. And I got all of these festivals, like you guys, I'm here. And then it passed away and just had the happiest life with us. And so I feel like I went through this full cycle of loss and grief through this film.
Yeah. I appreciate you telling us that. And I think as I was watching the film, there is a sense of catharsis running throughout the entire narrative. And you get the sense that even though there's this very twisted story going on here of what I think is perhaps a serial killer.
He's definitely a serial killer, but you don't want to admit it because you love him so much.
Right, you connect with him, and he vapes a lot, and there's something very like relatable about this guy, and you want to
you
believe.
Love the little boy because he's got these big doe eyes with his long eyelashes. But he's already a little bit sociopathic when he's a child. If you notice through the whole film, he never speaks to any adults, except once he tells his mother where he found the money, once he asks if his father is drunk, and otherwise he only speaks to the ghost and himself as an adult.
Right, that's true,
And he never tells an adult that he found a body from a car accident or a motorcycle accident in the woods. He just keeps her as his friend.
Yeah. And you're sort of, I think, to some extent blinded by that. I can't remember who said this quote, but it was like, if you want to relate to anyone, you should imagine them as their younger self. And so I think by having the older version and also the younger self allows us to empathize more with this character who is doing a lot of, morally gray things. And, speaking about that, I was thinking about euthanasia and how that's a part of this film, and also Buddhism is also a part of the film. And specifically Buddhist beliefs about how the dead move on. Could you comment a little bit on the intersection of the two and their compatibility, or rather their incompatibility?
Well, there is a compatibility in that as Buddhists, we believe in reincarnation, and we do believe that to be able to so-called move on completely, moving on for us could mean being born again, or it could mean like reaching nirvana, which is not so simple, of course. But I think the incompatibility is most people who view supernatural films or even time travel films always think of time as this linear point A to point B to point C, ending at Z. But the reality is, like in Buddhism, we don't believe that. Time for us could be cyclical, or it could be spiraling in on itself through rebirth, or it could be intersecting in this way. So similarly to this boy and this girl, she starts her life upon death. basically. And
Mm,
she's caught in this kind of, I guess you could say, purgatory, a limbo.
right.
And she keeps cycling through this point of the boy's life to the end of his life as an old man, and then she comes back in like a snail shell. And when
Mm-hmm.
she realizes that she's able to, because at the end, as you know, the story becomes more about her.
Yeah.
Um, and as she's able to manipulate the different boys and the different old men, she also is kind of, I don't want to say that she's selfish, but all the adults in this film are doing something relatively selfish to try and
Yes.
find the most favorable rebirth or the most favorable outcome for themselves. And every time this little boy is reborn, she's there, she's ready. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
could, every time he's 9 years old again, he's going to stumble upon when her cycle restarts in her purgatory.
Yeah.
And at the end, she never gets released. You know, she is
Right.
stuck in purgatory, but at the end, she's at least stuck with the version of him that she loves the most, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I actually was going to ask you about that. I was wondering if there was a parallel you were drawing between the Buddhist cycle of life and death and the film's time travel and traversing between past and present, which is a very unique sort of two concepts to blend together. But I think it works really well.
I'm
Yeah.
glad. I mean, we actually had our art department, we had to give names to the different timelines so that they could keep the house's transformation, like in their heads, because I don't have a continuity person. And so the whole
Uh-huh.
team was like, okay, this is the dark side timeline, we would say, for when he had warped that little boy, when the two of them had warped that little boy to the point where he's a monster, you know?
Yeah.
And then we would have the golden timeline, which is a little boy before all the bad shit started happening, before he discovered the old man interfering with his life. And we also had a color scheme for each timeline for the color correction, for the
Okay.
colorist. So the shift is very subtle in each iteration or each
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, or not lifetime, because we're only watching one boy's lifetime, but he's watching a different old man timeline each time he comes back, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
we're watching one boy's timeline, and the color is changing as the film goes on, and you don't notice it until the little boy crosses the line and you're like, whoa, that's
Yes.
drastic. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Right. And that's actually got me curious. When your husband was writing the film, um, I'm wondering, like, how did you deal with all of these intricate details that end up coming up when you're creating a time traveling narrative? Did you guys have a diagram or something like that to make sure everything was falling in place? Or was it just,
oh
okay, we're going to revise, 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 and make sure
oh
everything
my god,
is
I mean,
clicking?
if you could see how we work, it's so ghetto, like you wouldn't believe it. This is the
Okay.
largest crew I have ever had in my life, and it was like less than 20 people, I think. And
Hmm.
6 of them were in the art department. 6 of them,
Okay.
because we had to have like teams of 3. So like one team was like doing the current timeline that I was shooting, and another team was like fixing the house while we were shooting on the road. Like it was
Yeah.
ridiculous. So the script is surprisingly sparse. Like if you want, I'll send you the script for you to read.
Hmm.
It's it only mentions the details that we need to fixate on. For instance, the different states of the glass doll, or
Right.
the little glass doll in the cabinet, the different state of the cabinet itself, and other items that you need to draw your eye to. But otherwise, no. Like the art team and I sat down and we discussed. We drew some photos. In my home and in the office, I had A4 papers stuck along the entire side of the wall, and with color pencil, I had a road drawn, and it would like branch
Okay.
off and like diverge and come reconverge with
Yeah.
like, and I'd
Yeah.
like draw little stick figures, like, oh, this is the darkest timeline now.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Stuff like that. But the script is very sparse.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
All right. So, sort of moving into my last question here. I got the sense that the village you depicted in the film, in a lot of ways, is the kind of place that people leave for bigger and better things. I mean, the young boy's father abandons him for the city, and
Mhm.
also the woman who's rooming with the old man. Sorry, I forget her name in the
Lena,
film.
the only character with a name, by the way.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, but it's only mentioned once, her name.
Right. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so don't
got it.
worry about it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, she leaves too. She leaves too, at least in one timeline of the film.
Right.
She
She leaves with
leaves
her
for the
girlfriend.
city.
That's correct.
Right. So as someone who doesn't know much about Lao, I was wondering if this may have been a comment on sort of the urbanization or modernization of Lao, and if so, could you comment on that a bit?
The leaving thing isn't so much a comment on the urbanization, so much as it's just a reality. People
Okay.
do that. They go from the villages to our city, to Vientiane capital, to find work or to work in other places like Thailand or even overseas, other places to send money home or just to find opportunity. And that's
Hmm.
very common in Lao. I think in India that's less common, right? Because you guys are so big that there's like plenty of things to do in every area. But it's almost, you know, like how there's a stereotype that Filipinos also leave their country to find work. It's
Sure.
very much a reality here in Lao, but it starts out very microcosmic at first, with like people from the rural villages coming into the larger towns here and then moving into the capital. And then eventually the goal is like to go somewhere like Thailand to work in domestic help or something like that, as a domestic helper or something. And I think it's harder for us to travel with our passports versus Filipinos and
Hmm.
Indians. Um, and the comment on urbanization is actually the entire film.
Okay, right.
Um, because you can always see when the little boy is walking, the horizon and the long stretch of road is the same. So
Yeah.
like in 50, 60 years, not much has changed, but the
Yeah.
skyline on the old man side has this like crazy megalopolis, right? This crazy metropolitan
Yes.
city. And that's supposed to be Vientiane. And it's always constantly under construction. If you could like zoom in really close to it, you could see a crane is always working
Just like
in the
Delhi.
background.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's there's always something being built, right?
Yes, yes.
It's very different. And then if you were to leave the city for like 5 years, you come back and there's so many things that just like popped up out of the
Yeah.
blue. And then when you came back in the next year, it would already be like in entropy,
Yeah.
the new thing that had just popped up, the new skyscraper, because there are a lot of projects that don't get seen to fruition, or the finances fall apart, or they're just money laundering projects from other countries.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And so this is a huge commentary, and the NGOs coming and injecting things like rapid modernization into our societies, which they construe as saving us or as helping us, which we may not necessarily need. Sorry, like I just got a kitten and it needs me.
Oh. That is so cute.
And for me, it's like in Lao, I feel like modernization washes over us in this like wave. And then sometimes after that wave settles, all you see is like the degraded remains, you know, the rusted,
Yeah.
hollowed out, unsuccessful remains. And
Right.
the easiest way to put it is like we went through a period where households didn't even have internet. I came here 10 years ago and there was no Wi-Fi in anyone's house. One of the
Hmm.
reasons why we were excited to be working with Loud Media was they offered us an office with Wi-Fi. And we're like, what? Finally, we don't have to go to an internet cafe. And I know that sounds so wrong, but like, we're like, wow, Wi-Fi. And we went from no Wi-Fi and no, what would you say, like household computers, to
Hmm.
everybody having 4G in the palm of their hands. Because now every child has a smartphone and has 4G. Like we just skipped that computer stage, you know? And it's so strange. It's really
Yeah.
super strange to see that here in Lao.
And I'm wondering then, it was were some of the sci-fi elements in the film like the embodied sort of financial transfers that happen. Was that sort of also a comment or a way for you to emphasize this change, this rapid change that's happening?
Oh, definitely. Super, super definitely. Just because, like I said, modernization just kind of hits us.
Yeah.
We never eased into modernization here in Lao, and everybody wants us to like instantly go overnight from being rather agrarian to wanting to become Seoul overnight, or wanting to become like freaking Hong Kong overnight. Like it's
Yeah.
not it should not happen like that.
Right.
And the whole money thing, I remembered I was in, I want to say I was in Fuzhou. I can't remember where I was, but I was in China, and it was really late at night and I wanted a snack. And so I came down from the hotel that I was staying into this like super mom and pop shop. Just like really, you know, ghetto style late night mom and pop shop. And I bought some chips and some drinks, and I tried to pay with cash. And they were like, no, 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 no cash, no cash. And they kept showing me this QR code sign
Yeah.
for WePay. And I was just like, I don't have WePay and I don't even know how to use this. Like, I'm so old fashioned. I have no idea how to use this.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like so futuristic to me. And within 2 years of that incident, we had a bank that started offering what they call one pay. And it's like also that QR code style payment. And I was just like, when did this happen? Like,
Yeah.
seriously, Lao, we only have 3 banks with debit cards, and all of a sudden we have QR code pay? Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I think that rapid change is very sort of concisely encapsulated the first time we see the money transfer thing, because
Yeah.
the first time as a viewer I saw that, I was like, wow, this technology is quite advanced. But then that shopkeeper is like, this is the ancient stuff. You're
Yeah.
also behind. Like, you need to, right?
Exactly.
So it's
And
like,
it's kind of
oh,
like
okay,
a slap to the face, right? Where you're like, whoa, this
yes,
old man's got this like this embedded chip system in his arm, and he like looks at the time and wonders where the ghost is in the very beginning of the film. And you're like, wait, wait, wait. I'm not in like a period film, because in the beginning people almost
yeah,
think it's a period film about
sure,
poor
sure,
Lao people.
yeah,
And then he has that thing and they're like, whoa. And then he goes to that awesome, I love that guy, by the way. He's so spunky, you know? And he's
he was
like,
great, yeah,
dude, old man, like,
yeah,
did the transfer even go through? Your stuff is so old. Your junk is so old. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like shocking, you know?
yeah.
And you see the
Um,
girlfriends, and the girlfriends is colorful and she's got all
right,
these implants. And
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think I just have one more question I wanted to run by you, and then that's it. My last question then is, why the title, The Long Walk? What does that mean for you?
it started out from that inspiration of this old man just walking endlessly down this road where you can just, you know, it's just nature as far as the eye can see, nature and sky.
Mm,
And it's like this long walk. And it also felt like, for me, it's such a long walk to make any film. Um, and it's just like this never ending walk towards what? Towards what goal? To what end? What are people actually living their lives for? And what is the measure of satisfaction for anyone? I mean, for this old man and this boy, it's obviously not mom dying, right? Which is an
mm-hmm.
impossible walk for him. But I realize that that's a really bad name. It's a crappy name because it's a Stephen King film as well. And my friend is directing that Stephen King film, by the way. Hi,
Oh,
Andre. It's really sad. But the Lao title is very beautiful, but it doesn't translate well for our Western market. Bumiwanchak means like never a day apart or never a day separated. And that
mm,
sounds like ultra beautiful, but
yeah,
never a day apart sounds really strange in English, you know?
okay, yeah, yeah. All right, well, unless you have anything else to add, that's it for my questions.
I don't really have much to add. I mean, I'm super happy that you guys played it. And I'm
Yeah.
very glad that you decided to have a Q&A, because I just found out like September 8th, you know, the sales agent was like, hey, Dharam Shah wants to play the film. Is that okay? I was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
That's my husband, the screenwriter. Excuse
Okay.
us.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for telling us a little bit more about The Long Walk. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, it's available between the 29th of October and the 4th of November. So check it out. It will
I
blow
hope you
your
guys can
mind.
see it.
It'll make you think a lot, and you'll enjoy it. So thank you very much, Maddie.
Thank you. I wish I could be there with you guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.